There are towns in this country that the rest of America forgot about. Towns built around a single industry, held together by union cards and shift schedules, and the kind of blue-collar pride that doesn't ask for recognition because it was never offered any. Harwick Falls, Ohio was one of those towns, and the Meridian Fiber Mill was its soul. A massive, grinding, smoke-breathing giant that sat on the banks of the Keller River and turned raw timber into paper products around the clock, every hour of every day of every year. It employed over 1,000 men. It was loud, dangerous, and tightly bonded in the way that only places like that can be. A world unto itself, with its own rules, its own hierarchies, and its own deep, unforgiving code of loyalty. Danny Reese had worked there for 9 years. He wasn't a man who stood out. He clocked in, did his job, kept his head down, and went home. His coworkers later described him the way people always describe the quiet ones after something terrible happens. Decent, hard-working, the kind of guy who wouldn't stir the pot. And for 9 years that was true. But on the morning of February 11th, 2013, Danny Reese stirred the pot, and it cost him everything. It started with a theft. A senior shift supervisor named Carl Bruder had been stealing from the plant. Nothing dramatic at first. A few tools, some cord, small things that disappeared slowly enough that no one noticed or no one said anything. But Bruder got comfortable, and comfortable men get careless. By early 2013, he was walking heavier equipment out to his truck in the blue-black dark of the early morning, loading it up with the quiet confidence of a man who believed he was untouchable. Danny saw him do it, not once, several times. And Danny, who believed in doing the right thing with the kind of quiet stubbornness that some men are just born with, picked up the phone. He called the non-emergency tip line. He kept his voice low. He gave the details, the dates, the items, the truck, the pattern. And when the operator asked his name, Danny said he'd rather not give it. The operator confirmed it, anonymous, protected, safe. Except it wasn't any of those things. What happened next is one of the most staggering institutional failures you'll ever hear tied to a workplace death. The Harwick Falls Police Department, for reasons that were never satisfactorily explained, through negligence or indifference or something worse, released the recorded tip tape to mill management. And mill management, rather than treating it as a confidential personnel matter, played it. They played it for Bruder. And Bruder, who had worked alongside Danny Reese for the better part of a decade, knew that voice the moment he heard it. The tape spread, the way things always spread in a place like that, fast and with weight. By the time Danny arrived for his next shift, the mill already knew. Men who had nodded to him in the break room for years looked through him. Conversations stopped when he walked in. The word that followed him down every corridor and across every floor had 4 letters and 1 meaning: snitch. In the culture of that mill, in the culture of places like that mill all across this country, there is no word that lands heavier. There is no sin that cuts deeper. These were men who had grown up being told that you handled things yourself, that you didn't go outside the circle, that loyalty to the men beside you was the only loyalty that mattered. Danny had broken that. He had gone to the police, and now everyone knew. The days that followed were brutal. Danny came to work because he had to, because he had a family and a mortgage and 9 years in, and walking away wasn't something a man like Danny did easily. But every shift was a kind of slow suffocation. The silence from his coworkers, the looks, the muttering that stopped just short of confrontation, the tension that built in that building the way pressure builds in a sealed pipe, quietly, invisibly, until something gives. On the night of February 19, 2013, something gave. Danny Reese clocked in for the late shift at 10 minutes past 11. He was seen in the break room shortly after midnight. Witnesses would later give conflicting accounts of what happened in that room. Some said there was a confrontation, raised voices, a circle of men. Others said they saw nothing. Others said they weren't there. The blue wall that exists in police departments has nothing on the wall that goes up inside a factory when men decide to protect each other. Getting anyone to talk about what happened in that break room was like trying to hold smoke in your hands. What is not disputed is that Danny Reese entered that break room. What is not disputed is that he never returned to his workstation. Supervisors assumed he'd stepped out, maybe felt sick, maybe left early without clocking out. It wasn't until his wife called the plant at 6 in the morning, asking why he hadn't come home, that the alarm was raised. A search began. The mill was enormous, a labyrinth of catwalks and corridors and processing floors, and chambers that hummed and thundered and filled the air with heat and noise. Finding one man in that place was not a simple thing. They found him in Vat 4. One of the massive pulp processing vats that sat in a row along the northeast side of the plant, deep, cylindrical, filled with the churning slurry of dissolved fiber that would eventually become paper. Danny Reese was at the bottom of it, submerged, and tied around his body was a length of heavy rope, looped through a cast-iron counterweight that had been taken from the floor nearby. He was 38 years old. The county medical examiner ruled it a homicide. The evidence of what had been done to him and how his body had come to be in that vat was not consistent with an accident and not consistent with suicide. Investigators concluded that Danny Reese had been attacked and killed in retaliation for the tip he had made, and that his body had been put in that vat by men who worked alongside him. Men who knew that plant well enough to know where the cameras didn't reach and when the floor would be empty. The investigation lasted over a year. It was painstaking, maddening work. The code of silence inside that mill was extraordinary. Men who had witnessed things said they had seen nothing. Men who had heard things said they had heard nothing. Investigators pressed, cajoled, threatened, offered deals, and slowly, painfully, the picture began to come together. 5 men were eventually arrested and charged with Danny Reese's murder. All of them were mill workers. All of them had been, in one way or another, connected to what happened that night. The trials gripped Harwick Falls in the way that only hometown tragedies can. The kind of case where everyone knew someone involved, where the diner conversations never ended, where the local paper ran out of ways to describe the community's anguish. 4 of the 5 were convicted. The sentences were severe: life in prison, no parole. The 5th saw his conviction overturned on appeal, a federal judge ruling that the evidence presented against him had been insufficient to meet the bar of reasonable doubt. He walked out of Hardwick Correctional after 4 years inside, a free man by law, if not entirely by reputation. Carl Bruder, the man whose theft had started all of it, was convicted separately on theft and obstruction charges. He served 3 years. But the question that has never gone away, the question that gets asked every few years by a documentary crew, or an investigative journalist, or a law school student writing a thesis, is whether the 4 men behind bars actually did what they were convicted of doing. The prosecution's case rested almost entirely on witness testimony, and witness testimony in a place like that is a fragile thing. There was no forensic evidence placing any specific individual at the scene of the attack, no DNA, no recorded admission. Just men saying what they remembered, or what they were willing to say. Some of the witnesses who testified at trial later recanted. Some said they had been pressured. One said he had been told what the investigators needed him to say and had said it because he was scared. Whether those recantations are the truth or a new set of lies is something no one has been able to definitively settle.
The families of the convicted men have been fighting the cases ever since. The family of Danny Reese has been fighting too, fighting to make sure that whatever the truth is, it isn't buried under the same silence that killed him. Because that's the thing about this story that never leaves you. Danny Reese didn't do anything wrong. He saw something illegal. He reported it. He did exactly what a responsible person is supposed to do. And the system that was supposed to protect that, the anonymous tip line, the confidentiality, the basic expectation that a citizen could report a crime without being exposed, failed him completely. One careless act by the police department that received his call set off a chain of events that could not be stopped. The Meridian Fiber Mill closed in 2018. The building sat empty for 2 years before it was partially demolished. The vats were taken out. The land is a logistics warehouse now. Trucks back in and out of it every day, and the drivers have no idea what happened there. But the people of Hardick Falls know. They'll always know. You cannot demolish a memory just by tearing down the walls that held it. Danny Reese made one phone call. He thought it was anonymous. He thought he was safe. And on a frozen February night, in a town the rest of America forgot about, in a room that nobody will fully account for, he paid for that phone call with his life. The machinery runs somewhere else now. The shift schedules belong to other men in other towns. But somewhere in a prison in Ohio, 4 men wake up every morning inside the consequences of that night. And somewhere, Danny Reese's family wakes up too. And none of them, not one, has ever gotten the full truth.